A woman stood at the edge of everything she'd ever known, staring at two futures, one gilded in security, the other wild with risk. In 3 days, Lena Cross would marry a man she'd never loved to save her family's crumbling empire. But the rancher who once saved her life had just asked her to run. One choice would please everyone. The other would destroy her name forever. She had 72 hours to decide whether to live for duty or die trying to be free. If you want to see how a single decision can rewrite a woman's entire existence, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see just how far this story travels. The dust hadn't settled from the horses when Lena's father made his announcement at the dinner table. Just like that. No warning, no ceremony. He'd sold her future the way he sold cattle, quickly, coldly, and without asking if she had any say in the matter. His name is Gregory Hartwell, her father said, carving into a roast that looked better than it tasted. From Philadelphia, railroad money. He'll be here in 3 days. Lena's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Across the table, her mother's face remained perfectly neutral, which meant she'd already known. Her younger brother, Tom, had the decency to look uncomfortable. 3 days, Lena repeated. Her voice came out flat. That's what I said. And I'm supposed to marry him. Yes. Her father didn't even look up from his plate. You're 24, Lena. Past time you were settled. Settled. Like she was livestock being put out to pasture. I don't even know him. You'll get to know him. That's what marriage is for. He finally met her eyes, and what she saw there wasn't cruelty exactly. It was something worse. Indifference. This ranch is bleeding money. The drought's killed half our herd. Hartwell's investment keeps us afloat, and his name opens doors we can't open ourselves. It's a good match. For who? For this family. His tone shifted into something harder. For the roof over your head and the food on this table. Don't pretend you've built any of this yourself. The words hit like a slap, but Lena didn't flinch. She'd learned long ago that showing pain only encouraged him. What if I say no? Her father laughed, short and sharp. Then you're a fool. Where exactly do you think you'll go? What do you think you'll do? You think some dirt-poor rancher's going to take you in and give you the life you're used to? The image of Caleb Ridge flashed through her mind so fast it left a burn. She pushed it down before it could show on her face. You'll marry Hartwell, her father continued. You'll do it with grace, and you'll be grateful that a man of his standing is willing to overlook the fact that you're getting old for this sort of thing. Lena set her fork down carefully. Her hands wanted to shake, but she wouldn't let them. May I be excused? Her mother spoke for the first time, voice soft as silk and twice as binding. Lena, darling, your father's only thinking of what's best. May I be excused? Her father waved a hand in dismissal, already bored with her. She pushed back from the table and walked out before anyone could see the fury rising up her throat like bile. The night air hit her face and she kept walking, past the main house, past the stables, past the fence line where the land dropped into darkness. She didn't stop until her boots hit the creek bed, and the sound of water covered the sound of her breathing. 7 years. It had been 7 years since the day Caleb Ridge pulled her out of that ravine. She'd been 17 and stupid, riding too fast through terrain she didn't know, and her horse had spooked at a rattler. The fall had knocked the wind out of her and cracked 2 ribs. She'd lain there in the dust, staring up at the sky, wondering if this was how she'd die. Alone and broken at the bottom of a ditch nobody rode through. Then a shadow had blocked out the sun. Don't move, a voice had said, low and steady. I'm going to check if anything's broken. She'd turned her head and seen him for the first time, Caleb Ridge, all lean muscle and sun-weathered skin, eyes the color of slate. He'd knelt beside her with the kind of careful competence that came from a life spent handling things that could kill you if you weren't paying attention. Can you breathe? He'd asked. Yes. Does it hurt when you do? Yes. Then you probably cracked something. I'm going to lift you. It's going to hurt worse. He hadn't lied. The pain had whited out her vision for a moment, but his grip had been solid and sure. He'd gotten her onto his horse, steadied her against his chest, and ridden 3 miles to the nearest doctor without saying another word. She'd asked his name when they arrived. Caleb, he'd said. Then he'd tipped his hat and ridden off before she could even thank him. She'd thought about him every day since. Not in any romantic way at first, just curious, grateful. He'd saved her life and asked for nothing in return. In a world where everything came with a price, that felt like something rare. Then she'd seen him again at the quarterly livestock auction. He'd been standing off to the side, watching the crowd with that same quiet intensity. Their eyes had met across the pen, and he'd nodded once, just the barest acknowledgement, before turning back to the cattle. It should have been nothing. It was nothing, but Lena had felt it like a hook in her chest. After that, she'd found reasons to ride near his property. Not close enough to be obvious, just close enough to catch a glimpse now and then. She'd learned that he ran a small ranch on the northern edge of the valley, that he worked alone, that he kept to himself and didn't socialize much in town. She'd also learned that he looked at her sometimes when he thought she wasn't watching. It had gone on like that for years, this silent, impossible thing between them that neither of them ever named. A look that lasted too long. A conversation at the general store that stayed just this side of appropriate. The time he'd helped her fix a broken wagon wheel and their hands had brushed and she'd felt the spark of it all the way to her bones. But nothing had ever happened. Nothing could happen. Because Caleb Ridge was exactly the kind of man her father would never accept. He had no family name, no fortune, no connections. He had a patch of hard land, a dozen head of cattle, and a reputation for being decent but difficult. And Lena. Lena had been raised to believe that love was a luxury her family couldn't afford. Until tonight. She stood at the edge of the creek and felt the weight of 3 days pressing down on her skull. 3 days until Gregory Hartwell arrived. 3 days until her life stopped being hers. The smart thing to do would be to accept it, marry the railroad man, live in comfort, pretend she was happy. But Lena had never been as smart as she was stubborn. She turned and started walking. Not back toward the house, toward the stables, toward the horse she'd already saddled in the back of her mind, toward the northern edge of the valley where a small ranch sat quiet under the stars, toward the only man she'd ever wanted and the only choice that felt like freedom. The ride took an hour. By the time Lena reached Caleb's property, her heart was beating so hard she could feel it in her teeth. The ranch was small but well kept. A single-story cabin, a barn, a corral. A lantern burned in the window, which meant he was still awake. She dismounted and tied her horse to the post. Stood there for a long moment, staring at that square of golden light. She could still turn around. She could still go home and pretend this had never happened. But then the door opened. Caleb stood framed in the doorway, shirt half unbuttoned, hair damp like he'd just washed. He stared at her for a beat, expression unreadable. Lena. Just her name. Nothing else. But the way he said it, low and rough and careful, made her chest ache. "I need to talk to you," she said. He stepped aside without a word, and she walked into his house for the first time in her life. It was sparse but clean. A table, a chair, a bed in the corner. The scent of wood smoke and leather and something else she couldn't name, but that made her feel safe in a way her own home never had. Caleb shut the door and turned to face her, arms crossed, waiting. "My father's arranged a marriage," she said. No preamble, no softening. "To a man from Philadelphia. I'm supposed to marry him in 3 days. Something flickered across Caleb's face, too fast to name, but his voice stayed even. "I see. I don't want to." "Then don't. It's not that simple. Isn't it?" "No." She took a breath. "He's doing it to save the ranch. We're in debt. This man has money and connections. If I say no, my family loses everything." "And if you say yes," Caleb said quietly, "you lose yourself." She hadn't expected him to understand so quickly, hadn't expected him to cut straight to the bone of it. "I don't know what to do," she admitted. Caleb was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was rougher than before. "Why'd you come here, Lena?" "Because—" She stopped, started again. "Because I needed to tell someone. And you're the only person who—" Another stop. Another start. "7 years ago, you saved my life. That was a long time ago." "Not to me." The silence stretched taut between them. "I think about that day," Lena said. "More than I should. I think about the way you didn't hesitate, the way you didn't ask for anything in return. I think about how—" Her voice cracked, but she forced it steady. How you're the only person who ever made me feel like I mattered just because I existed. Not because of my name or my family or what I could give you, just me. Caleb's jaw tightened. Lena, I know you feel it too. She stepped closer. I've seen the way you look at me, the way you make excuses to be in the same room, the way your hand lingers when we accidentally touch. I know I'm not imagining this. You're not, he said, and the admission came out like gravel. But that doesn't change anything. It changes everything. No. He shook his head. It doesn't. Because I'm not the kind of man your father wants for you. I can't give you what he can. I can't offer you security or status or any of the things you're used to. I don't care about those things. You say that now, I mean it. She closed the distance between them, heart hammering. I don't want his money. I don't want his world. I want... She forced herself to say it. I want you. Caleb went still, completely, utterly still. I've wanted you since the day you pulled me out of that ravine, Lena continued, words tumbling out now like she couldn't stop them. I've wanted you through every empty conversation, at every empty dinner. I've wanted you through every man my father ever paraded in front of me. I've wanted you so much it feels like something broken inside me that I can't fix. Lena, tell me I'm wrong. Her voice cracked again. Tell me you don't feel the same, and I'll walk out of here and marry Gregory Hartwell and never bother you again. Caleb stared at her. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides. His breathing had gone shallow. I can't tell you that, he said finally. Why not? Because it would be a lie. He took a single step closer, and the air between them felt electric. I've loved you for 7 years, Lena Cross. And it's been the worst kind of torture because I've always known that you were never meant for someone like me. The confession hung in the air between them, raw and aching. But I am, Lena whispered. I'm standing right here. I'm telling you I want this. I want you. And I have 3 days before my father takes that choice away forever. Caleb's control finally cracked. He reached for her, not gently, not carefully, and pulled her against him with a desperation that matched her own. His mouth found hers and she gasped into the kiss, hands fisting in his shirt, feeling 7 years of wanting crash over her all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Caleb pressed his forehead to hers. This is a mistake, he said roughly. Then it's my mistake to make. Your father will come after us. Let him. Lena, I don't care. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. I've spent my whole life being told what to do and who to be and what I'm worth. I'm done. I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you. Caleb searched her face like he was trying to memorize it. You understand what you're giving up? I understand what I'm gaining. Another beat of silence. Then Caleb exhaled, long and shaky, and nodded. All right. All right? Yeah. He cupped her face in both hands, rough palms warm against her skin. If you want this, if you really want this, then we do it right. No hiding, no shame. We go to your father tomorrow and tell him the truth. He'll never allow it. I don't care if he allows it or not. You're not his property. Caleb's eyes went hard. But I won't do this in secret, like it's something to be ashamed of. If we're doing this, we're doing it in the open. Lena felt something loosen in her chest, something that had been tight for so long she'd forgotten it was there. Tomorrow then, she said. Tomorrow. He kissed her again, slower this time, deliberate, like he was sealing a promise. When Lena finally rode home that night, the sky was starting to lighten at the edges. She unsaddled her horse in the pre-dawn quiet and slipped back into the house without waking anyone. In her room, she sat on the edge of her bed and stared at her hands. They were shaking now. Not from fear, from something bigger. She'd just set her life on fire, and she couldn't wait to watch it burn. Bount. Morning came too fast and too slow. Lena dressed carefully. Nothing fancy, but nothing that would make her look weak. A simple blouse, a split riding skirt, boots she could run in if she needed to. She braided her hair tight and checked her reflection. The woman staring back looked calm. That was good. She didn't feel calm, but she could fake it. Breakfast was tense. Her father was already in a foul mood, snapping at Tom over something trivial. Her mother ate in silence, eyes down. Lena forced herself to eat 3 bites of eggs, even though they tasted like ash. "I'll be riding out this morning," her father announced. "Got business in town. Hartwell's people are sending a telegram with his arrival time." "Actually," Lena said, setting down her fork, "I need to talk to you about that." Her father glanced up, already irritated. "About what?" "About the marriage." "There's nothing to talk about. It's settled." "No," Lena said quietly. "It's not." The room went silent. Even Tom stopped chewing. Her father's expression shifted into something dangerous. "Excuse me? I'm not going to marry Gregory Hartwell." "Yes," her father said, very slowly, "you are." "No." Lena's heart was beating so hard she could feel it in her throat, but her voice stayed steady. "I'm not. Because I'm going to marry someone else." Her mother made a small, choked sound. "Who?" her father demanded. Before Lena could answer, there was a knock at the front door. Her father's eyes narrowed. "Who the hell is calling at this hour?" Lena stood. "That would be him." She walked to the door before anyone could stop her and pulled it open. Caleb stood on the porch, hat in hand, dressed in his cleanest shirt. He met her eyes for a brief moment, just long enough for her to see the resolve there, then looked past her to where her father was rising from the table. "Mr. Cross," Caleb said evenly, "I'm here to ask permission to marry your daughter." The silence that followed was so complete, Lena could hear the clock ticking in the hall. Then her father laughed. It was a cold, ugly sound. "You've got to be out of your goddamn mind." "No, sir," Caleb said. "I'm perfectly sane." "You think I'm going to let my daughter marry some nobody rancher with dirt under his nails and nothing to his name?" Her father's voice rose. "You think I worked this hard to build this family just to let her throw it away on you?" "With respect," Caleb said, and his tone didn't change. "Lena's not a piece of property. She's a person. And she's choosing me." "Like hell she is." "She is," Lena said, stepping forward. "I love him, and I'm going to marry him whether you give your blessing or not." Her father's face went red. "You will do no such thing. You will marry Hartwell like we agreed." "You agreed?" Lena shot back. "I didn't. You sold me like livestock and expected me to smile about it." "Well, I'm done smiling." "You ungrateful." Her father took a step toward her and Caleb moved, smooth and fast, putting himself between them. "Don't," Caleb said quietly. "Not a threat? A fact." For a long moment, her father just stared at him. Then he turned to Lena, and what she saw in his eyes was colder than anger. "If you walk out that door with him," he said, "you're not my daughter anymore. You're not welcome here. You get nothing. No inheritance, no family, no name. You'll be dead to me. Do you understand?" Lena felt the words land like blows, but she didn't flinch. "I understand." "Lena," her mother's voice broke. "Please think about what you're doing." "I have thought about it," Lena said. She looked at her mother and felt a stab of guilt, but it wasn't enough to stop her. "I've thought about it every day for 7 years, and this is my choice." Her father's jaw worked. "Then get out. Right now. Take whatever you can carry and get the hell off my land." "Gladly." Lena turned and walked upstairs. Her hands were shaking again, but she moved fast, grabbing a bag, stuffing in clothes, a few photographs, the money she'd saved from small jobs over the years. Not much, but enough. When she came back down, Caleb was still standing in the doorway. Her father had turned his back, shoulders rigid. Her mother was crying silently into her hands. Tom looked like he wanted to say something, but couldn't figure out what. Lena walked past all of them without a word. Caleb followed her out. At the porch steps, she stopped and looked back one last time. Her father didn't turn around. "Let's go," she said to Caleb. They rode away together as the sun climbed higher. Lena didn't look back again. The first week was the hardest. Not because Lena regretted her choice, but because the reality of it was sharper than she'd expected. Caleb's ranch was small, smaller than she'd realized. The cabin had 1 room, 1 bed, a stove that needed constant tending. The well was a 50-yard walk. The barn leaked. The fences needed mending, and the work was endless. Lena had grown up on a ranch, but she'd grown up as the daughter of the owner, not the labor. She'd never mucked stalls or hauled water or skinned a rabbit for supper. She'd never spent 12 hours in the sun mending fences until her hands bled. She learned fast. She had to. Caleb worked from sunrise to sunset and expected her to do the same. Not out of cruelty, out of necessity. There were only two of them, and the land didn't care about romance or rebellion. It cared about whether the crops got watered and the animals got fed. By the end of the first week, Lena's hands were blistered and her back ached, and she fell into bed every night too exhausted to do anything but sleep. But she didn't complain, not once, because every time she thought about saying something, she'd remember the look on her father's face when she walked out. She'd remember the way he dismissed her like she was nothing, and she'd remember the way Caleb had stepped between them without hesitation. "You doing all right?" Caleb asked one evening as they sat on the porch after supper. "I'm fine," Lena said. He gave her a sideways look. "Your hands say different." She glanced down at her palms, raw and red, bandaged in places. "They'll toughen up." "Lena, I'm fine," she said again more firmly. "I chose this. I knew what I was choosing." Caleb studied her for a long moment. Then he reached over and took one of her hands in his, turning it over gently. His thumb traced the edge of a bandage. "You didn't deserve this," he said quietly. "Neither did you." She squeezed his hand. "But here we are." A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Yeah, here we are." They sat in silence as the sun sank lower. Lena leaned her head against his shoulder and felt the steady rise and fall of his breathing. She was tired. She was sore. She was living in a one-room cabin with no family and no safety net, but she was also free, and that was worth every blister. See, 3 weeks after Lena left, her father sent someone. It wasn't him. Of course it wasn't him. It was one of his men, a ranch hand named Becker, who Lena had known since she was a kid. He rode up in the late afternoon while Caleb was out checking traps and Lena was hanging laundry. "Miss Cross," he said, tipping his hat. He still called her that, like she hadn't burned her name to the ground. "Becker." Lena didn't stop working. "What do you want?" "Your father sent me. Tell him I'm not interested in whatever he has to say. He wanted me to give you this." Becker held out an envelope. Lena eyed it like it might bite her. "What is it?" "Money. Enough to get you out of here, set you up somewhere decent." "I don't want his money." "He said you'd say that." Becker shifted in his saddle, looking uncomfortable. "He also said to tell you that Hartwell's furious, threatened to pull his investment. Your father's scrambling to keep the ranch afloat." "Good," Lena said flatly. "Maybe he'll finally understand what it feels like to have your life taken away." "Miss Cross?" "Lena," she corrected. "Just Lena. I'm not a Cross anymore." He made that clear. Becker sighed. "He's a stubborn man, but he's also desperate. Things aren't going well. If you came back..." "I'm not coming back. Even if it means he loses everything? Especially if it means that." She turned to face him fully. "He sold me to save himself. He treated me like property. I don't owe him anything." Becker looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, I'll tell him." He started to turn his horse, then paused. "For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. Ridge is a good man, better than most." "I know," Lena said. Becker rode off. Lena stood there holding a wet sheet, watching him disappear into the distance. When Caleb came home that evening, she told him what happened. "You think you'll try again?" Caleb asked. "Maybe, I don't know." Lena folded her arms. "Does it matter?" "Only if it matters to you." "It doesn't." She met his eyes. "I meant what I said. I'm not going back." Caleb pulled her close, tucking her head under his chin. "Good, because I'm not giving you up." Lena closed her eyes and breathed him in, leather and wood smoke and something solid, something that felt like home. "You couldn't if you tried," she said. By the end of the first month, they'd fallen into a rhythm. It wasn't easy. The work was brutal and the money was tight. But they were building something, slowly, painfully, together. Lena learned to shoot a rifle, learned to hunt, learned to cook over an open fire when the stove gave out, learned to sew her own clothes when hers wore through. She also learned what it meant to live with someone, really live with them, the good parts and the hard parts. Like the way Caleb snored, the way he was grumpy in the mornings until he'd had coffee, the way he left his boots in the middle of the floor and forgot to close the cupboard, but also the way he made her coffee before she woke up. The way he'd take over her share of the work when he saw she was exhausted. The way he'd hold her at night like she was the only thing keeping him grounded. They fought sometimes. Not about big things. About small, stupid things. Who forgot to latch the gate? Who used the last of the flour? Who said what and meant something else entirely? But they always made up. Always came back to each other. Because at the end of the day, they'd chosen this. They'd chosen each other. And that was stronger than anything else. The first real test came in late summer. The drought hit hard. The creek dried up to a trickle. The grass turned brown and brittle. The cattle started losing weight, ribs showing through their hides. Caleb worked himself ragged trying to keep them alive. He dug a new well, hauled water from miles away, rationed the feed they couldn't afford to replace. But it wasn't enough. One morning, Lena woke to find him sitting on the porch, head in his hands. "What's wrong?" she asked, even though she already knew. "Lost 3 head overnight," he said. His voice was flat, empty. "Found them in the north pasture, just gone." Lena sat down beside him. "We'll figure it out." "How?" He looked at her, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked defeated. "We're barely scraping by as it is. If we lose any more, we won't. You don't know that." "No," she admitted, "but I know we're not giving up." Caleb let out a long, shaky breath. "I can't give you the life you deserve." "Yes, you can." Lena took his hand. "Because this, right here, this is the life I want, not the one my father tried to sell me into. This one, with you." He squeezed her hand so hard it hurt. "I love you. I love you too." She leaned against him. "So we fight, together." They stayed there until the sun came up. Then they got to work. Bulky. They made it through the summer, barely. By the time fall came, they'd lost half their herd and most of their savings. But they were still standing. And one evening in October, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Caleb turned to her. "Marry me," he said. Lena blinked. "What?" "Marry me. Properly. Not just in secret. I want everyone to know you're mine and I'm yours." A slow smile spread across her face. "You asking or telling?" "Asking." He pulled a ring from his pocket. Simple, silver, nothing fancy. "I don't have much, but I've got this, and I've got me. And if that's enough, it's enough," Lena said. She kissed him before he could finish. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." They got married the following week in a tiny church 2 towns over. No family, no guests, just them and a preacher who asked no questions. Lena wore a simple dress she'd sewn herself. Caleb wore his cleanest shirt and looked at her like she'd hung the moon. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Caleb kissed her in front of nobody and everybody all at once. And Lena felt something click into place inside her chest. This was it. This was her life now. And she'd never been more certain of anything. Winter came hard that year. The snow started in November and didn't let up. The temperature dropped so low that the water in the trough froze solid every night. The wind cut through the cabin walls like they weren't even there. Lena and Caleb spent most of their time huddled by the stove, rationing firewood and trying to keep warm. Money was tighter than ever. They'd sold what they could, but there wasn't much market for cattle in winter. They survived on beans and bread and whatever game Caleb could hunt. It was the kind of cold that settled into your bones and didn't leave, the kind of hardship that made you question every choice you'd ever made. But even in the worst of it, even when Lena's fingers were numb and her stomach was empty, she never regretted leaving, because she had Caleb, and that was everything. One night, as they lay in bed under every blanket they owned, he pulled her close. "You ever think about what your life would be like if you'd married Hartwell?" he asked quietly. "No," Lena said. "Never?" "Never." She turned to face him. "Why? Do you?" "Sometimes." He was quiet for a moment. "I think about how you'd be warm right now, how you'd have enough to eat, how you wouldn't have to work yourself to the bone just to survive. And I'd be miserable," Lena said. "I'd be living in a house that wasn't mine with a man I didn't love, pretending to be happy while dying inside." She touched his face. "This is hard, but it's real. And I'll take real over comfortable any day." Caleb kissed her forehead. You're tougher than I ever gave you credit for." "I had to be," she said. "You think I could have survived you otherwise?" He laughed, a real laugh, rough and warm. "Fair point." They fell asleep like that, tangled together under the blankets, holding on to each other against the cold. Outside, the wind howled. The snow kept falling, but inside, they were home. Spring came late that year, and when it finally arrived, it brought more problems than promises. The thaw turned the ground into a sucking mud that made every step twice as hard. The roof they'd patched all winter started leaking in 3 new places. And when Caleb went to check on what was left of their herd, he found 2 more cattle dead. Not from cold this time, but from something worse. "Disease," he said when he came back to the cabin. His face was grim. "Some kind of fever. Spreads fast." Lena looked up from the pot she was stirring. "How bad?" "Bad enough that if we don't separate the sick ones now, we'll lose everything." They spent the next week working in shifts, barely sleeping, trying to contain the spread. Caleb quarantined the infected animals in the far pasture. Lena boiled rags and mixed remedies from what little medicine they had left. They burned the carcasses of the ones that didn't make it and tried not to think about what each loss meant in dollars they didn't have. By the time the fever burned itself out, they'd lost 6 more head. That left them with exactly 9 cattle. 9. On a ranch that needed at least 30 to be sustainable. Caleb sat at the kitchen table one night, staring at the numbers he'd written in his ledger. His jaw was tight, his eyes dark with something Lena had never seen before. Not quite defeat, but close enough to scare her. "Talk to me," she said, sitting down across from him. "We're not going to make it." The words landed heavy. Final. "Yes, we are," Lena said. "No." He tapped the page. "Look at this. We've got enough money for maybe 2 more months if we're careful. After that, nothing. We can't buy feed. We can't replace the cattle we lost. We can't even afford seed for planting. Then we find another way." "What other way?" His voice rose, frustration bleeding through. "I've worked this land for 10 years, Lena. I know what it takes, and we don't have it. So what are you saying? That we give up?" "I'm saying maybe you should go back." The suggestion hit her like a slap. She stared at him. "What?" "To your father. You could—" "No." She stood up so fast her chair scraped loud against the floor. "Absolutely not. Lena, I'm not going back to him. Not now. Not ever." "You're starving here," Caleb said, and his voice cracked. "Look at you. You've lost weight. Your hands are destroyed. You work yourself into the ground every single day, and for what? So you can barely survive with me instead of living comfortably with someone else?" "This isn't about comfort," Lena shot back. "This has never been about comfort. I chose you. I chose this life, and I'm not walking away just because it got hard. It's not just hard, it's impossible. Nothing's impossible if we're together. That's naive." "Then I'm naive." She slammed her hand on the table. "I'd rather be naive and free than realistic and trapped. You want me to go crawling back to my father, admit he was right, spend the rest of my life wondering what could have been if I just had the guts to stick it out?" Caleb stood, meeting her anger with his own. "I want you to survive. That's all I've ever wanted. And if that means swallowing your pride—" "It's not about pride," Lena said. Her voice dropped, but it didn't soften. "It's about choice. He took that away from me once. I'm not letting anyone do it again, not even you." They stood there, breathing hard, staring at each other across the small table in the small cabin that suddenly felt even smaller. "I'm scared," Caleb said finally, quietly. "I'm scared I can't give you what you need." "You already have." Lena walked around the table and took his hands. They were rough and calloused, just like hers now. "You gave me freedom. You gave me choice. You gave me a life that's mine. That's worth more than anything my father ever offered." Caleb closed his eyes. "I just don't want you to regret this." "I won't." She squeezed his hands. "But we have to fight. We can't just sit here and wait to fail. We have to find a way." He opened his eyes and looked at her, really looked at her. Then he nodded. "All right, we fight. Together? Together." They didn't have a solution yet, but at least they were still on the same side. The next morning, Lena rode into town alone. She hadn't been back since the wedding, hadn't wanted to face the stares and the whispers. But they needed supplies, and more than that, they needed information. If there was work to be had, she'd find it. The general store was the same as she remembered, crowded and dusty, smelling of leather and tobacco. A few heads turned when she walked in. Someone whispered something she didn't catch. She ignored them and walked straight to the counter. Mr. Garrett, the owner, looked up and blinked. Miss Cross, or I suppose it's Mrs. Ridge now. It is, Lena said evenly. Haven't seen you in a while. Been busy? I imagine so. His tone was neutral, but his eyes were curious. What can I do for you? I need flour, salt, and coffee if you've got it, and I'm looking for work. That made him pause. Work? Anything. Mending, washing, cooking. I can handle livestock if someone needs help. Garrett scratched his chin. Times are tough all over. Not a lot of folks hiring right now. I'm not asking for charity. I'll work for fair pay. I believe you. He hesitated. But you know how people talk. Your father's made it pretty clear he's, well, not happy with your choices. Some folks might be hesitant to cross him. My father doesn't own this town, Lena said. No, but he's got influence. Lena leaned on the counter. Mr. Garrett, I'm not asking you to take sides. I'm asking if you know anyone who needs help. That's all. He studied her for a long moment. Then he sighed. Mrs. Patterson might need someone. Her daughter just had a baby and she's been struggling to keep up with the wash. Can't pay much, but it's something. I'll take it. I'll let her know you're interested. He started gathering her supplies. That'll be $2 for the flour and salt. Coffee's sold out. Shipment got delayed. Lena counted out the money, feeling the weight of how little was left. Thank you. As she turned to leave, Garrett called after her. Mrs. Ridge? She looked back. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I think you've got guts. Not many people would have done what you did. Lena didn't know if that was a compliment or just an observation, but she nodded anyway. Thanks. Outside, she loaded her supplies onto her horse and tried not to think about the faces watching her through the windows. Tried not to feel the weight of the name she'd left behind and the reputation she'd earned in its place. She'd become the town scandal, the rich girl who threw it all away for love. Some people probably thought she was brave. Others probably thought she was stupid. Lena didn't care what they thought. She just cared about getting through the next day. Mrs. Patterson hired her that afternoon. The work was exactly what Lena expected, brutal, repetitive, and endless. She spent hours bent over a washboard, scrubbing clothes until her knuckles were raw. Her back ached. Her shoulders burned. But when Mrs. Patterson paid her at the end of the week, Lena took the money and felt something like pride. It wasn't much, but she'd earned it herself. She started taking on more work wherever she could find it, mending clothes for the seamstress, helping at the bakery during the morning rush, mucking stalls for a rancher on the edge of town who didn't care about her family drama as long as she showed up on time. Caleb didn't like it. He didn't say so directly, but she could see it in the way his jaw tightened when she told him about a new job, and the way he'd insist on riding into town with her even though it meant losing hours of work at home. You don't have to do this, he said one morning as they rode side by side. Yes, I do. I can find work too. You're already working yourself to death on the ranch, Lena interrupted. We need someone there full-time or we'll lose what little we have left. This makes sense. I don't like you working for people who look down on you. I don't like it either, she admitted, but I can handle it. Caleb was quiet for a beat. You shouldn't have to. But I do. So I will. She glanced at him. Unless you've got a better idea? He didn't, and they both knew it. The truth was, Lena hated the work. Hated the way Mrs. Patterson watched her like she might steal something. Hated the whispers that followed her through town. Hated coming home so tired she could barely stand. But she also felt something she hadn't expected. Useful. Capable. Like she was contributing something real. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just a decoration or a bargaining chip. She was working, earning, surviving, and that mattered. By summer, they'd managed to scrape together enough money to buy 3 more cattle. It wasn't nearly enough, but it was progress. The ranch was still struggling. The fences still needed mending. The barn still leaked. The well they'd dug ran dry twice and had to be dug deeper, but they were holding on, barely. desperately, but holding on. And then the letter came. Lena found it tucked under a rock on the porch one evening when she got home from town. No envelope, just a folded piece of paper with her name written across it in handwriting she recognized immediately. Her brother's. She stood there for a long moment, staring at it. Part of her wanted to throw it away without reading it. The other part, the part that still remembered what it felt like to have a family, couldn't quite let go. She opened it. Lena, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't even know if you should, but I had to try. Things are bad here, worse than you probably think. Father lost the Hartwell deal after you left, lost most of his other investors too. We've had to sell off half the land just to cover the debts. Mother's not doing well. She doesn't say much anymore, just sits by the window and stares out like she's waiting for something that's never going to come. Father won't admit it, but I think he regrets what he did. Not enough to apologize. You know how he is. But he's different now. Smaller, somehow. I'm not writing to ask you to come back. I know you won't. But I wanted you to know that I miss you, that I don't blame you for leaving, that I think you were braver than any of us. If you ever want to talk, I'll be at the general store every Saturday morning. I won't tell Father. I'd like to see you, if you're willing. Your brother Tom. Lena read it twice, then a third time. When Caleb came in from the barn, he found her sitting at the table, the letter spread out in front of her. What's that? He asked. Letter from Tom. Caleb went still. What does he want? Nothing. He just... She stopped, started again. He says things are bad at home, that my father lost everything. Good. Caleb, I mean it. His voice was hard. After what he did to you? He deserves everything he got. Maybe. Lena folded the letter carefully. But Tom didn't deserve it. My mother didn't deserve it. They didn't stop him. No, but they didn't arrange the marriage either. She looked up at him. Tom wants to meet. Says he'll be in town on Saturdays. Caleb's expression didn't change. You gonna go? I don't know. Do you want to? That was the question, wasn't it? Did she want to see her brother? The boy who used to sneak her extra dessert at dinner? Who taught her to skip stones and helped her climb trees when she was supposed to be acting like a lady? I think so, she said quietly. Is that wrong? No. Caleb sat down across from her. He's your family. That doesn't just go away because your father's an ass. You wouldn't be angry if I went? Why would I be angry? Because, Lena gestured vaguely, because of everything, because of what they represent. Tom didn't do anything to you, Caleb said. Your father did. If you want to see your brother, see him. I'm not going to stop you. Lena felt something loosen in her chest. Thank you. He hesitated. Be careful. I don't trust your father not to use Tom to get to you. I will. The following Saturday, Lena rode into town earlier than usual. She tied her horse outside the general store and stood there for a minute, gathering her nerve. Through the window, she could see Tom browsing the shelves. He looked older than she remembered, thinner. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. She pushed open the door. Tom looked up. For a second, neither of them moved. Then his face broke into a smile, genuine and relieved, and he crossed the room in 3 long strides. Lena! Hi, Tom. For a moment, she thought he might hug her, but he seemed to think better of it and just stood there, hands shoved in his pockets, grinning like an idiot. You look good, he said. I look like hell, Lena corrected, but I'm alive. That counts. His smile dimmed a little. I wasn't sure you'd come. I wasn't sure either. They moved to the back of the store where it was quieter. Mr. Garrett gave them a knowing look, but didn't comment. How are you? Tom asked once they'd settled near the stacks of grain sacks. Surviving? You? Same. He rubbed the back of his neck. It's been rough. Father's... Well, you can imagine. Actually, I can't. I don't live there anymore. Tom winced. Fair point. He was quiet for a beat. He doesn't talk about you. Won't let anyone mention your name. It's like you just vanished. Good, Lena said. Then, softer. How's Mother? Not great. Tom's expression went pained. She misses you. Won't say it out loud, but I can tell. She keeps your room exactly the way you left it, goes in there sometimes and just sits. Guilt twisted in Lena's stomach, sharp and immediate. She shoved it down. She could have stopped him. She didn't.
I know, but she's still your mother. Doesn't mean I owe her anything. Tom didn't argue, just nodded slowly. You're different now. I have to be. I'm not saying it's bad, just different. He studied her. Are you happy? The question caught her off guard. Was she happy? She was exhausted, broke, working jobs she hated just to keep food on the table, living in a cabin that leaked and a life that was nothing like what she'd been raised for. But she was also free, and she was with Caleb. And when she woke up in the morning, she got to choose what her day looked like. Yeah, she said finally. I am. Tom smiled, small but real. Good. That's all I wanted to know. They talked for another hour, about nothing important, about the weather and the town gossip, and the new foal that had been born on the ranch. It was easy in a way Lena hadn't expected. Comfortable. When it was time to go, Tom walked her outside. Can I see you again? He asked. Same time next week? Lena hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, I'd like that. I won't tell Father, he promised. I know. She rode home feeling lighter than she had in months. When she told Caleb about it that night, he just pulled her close and kissed her forehead. I'm glad you went, he said. Me too. It became a routine after that. Every Saturday, Lena would meet Tom in town. Sometimes they'd walk. Sometimes they'd just sit and talk. He never pushed her to reconcile with their father, never made her feel guilty for leaving. He was just there, a small piece of the life she'd left behind that didn't hurt to hold on to. And for a while, things felt almost stable. But stability never lasted long on the frontier. It was late July when the fire started. Lena smelled the smoke before she saw the flames. She'd been inside mending a shirt when the acrid scent hit her. She dropped the needle and ran outside. The southern pasture was burning. Caleb, she screamed. He came running from the barn, took one look at the horizon, and started shouting orders. Get the buckets. We need to wet down the barn before it spreads. They worked in a frenzy, hauling water, beating back flames with wet blankets, moving the cattle to the far side of the property. The heat was brutal. The smoke choked her lungs. Lena's eyes burned and her throat was raw, but she didn't stop. By the time they got it under control, the sun was setting and half the pasture was scorched black. They stood in the ash, covered in soot, breathing hard. How did it start? Lena asked. Don't know. Caleb stared at the destruction. Lightning, maybe. Or someone's campfire got out of hand. Or it wasn't an accident. He looked at her sharply. What are you saying? I'm saying my father has a lot of reasons to want us gone. You think he'd burn us out? I think he's desperate enough to try anything. Caleb's jaw tightened. If he did this, we don't know that he did, Lena said quickly. I'm just saying it's possible. They stood there in silence, watching the smoke curl into the sky. Even if it was him, Caleb said finally, what are we supposed to do about it? We can't prove anything, and even if we could... I know. Lena felt exhaustion settle into her bones. I know. They went inside and washed the soot off as best they could. The water in the basin turned black. Lena's hands were shaking from adrenaline and fatigue. We lost at least half the grazing land, Caleb said quietly. It'll take months to recover, maybe longer. Can we afford that? He didn't answer, which was answer enough. That night, Lena lay awake staring at the ceiling while Caleb slept beside her. She could hear the wind outside, smell the lingering smoke. They were one disaster away from losing everything. One bad season, one more fire, one stroke of bad luck, and it would all be over. And the worst part was knowing that there were people, maybe even her own father, who would celebrate that. She turned onto her side and watched Caleb sleep. His face was relaxed in a way it never was during the day. Younger, less burdened. She'd done this to him, dragged him into her mess, made him a target for her father's anger. But she also knew, without question or doubt, that she'd make the same choice again. Because this, all of this, was still better than the alternative. The next Saturday, Lena rode into town like usual. But when she got to the general store, Tom wasn't there. She waited 15 minutes, then 30, then an hour. He never showed. Worry gnawed at her stomach. Tom had never missed a meeting before, never even been late.
She was about to leave when Mr. Garrett called out to her. "Mrs. Ridge, got something for you." He handed her a sealed envelope. Her name was written on the front in Tom's handwriting, but it was messier than usual, rushed. She tore it open right there. "Lena, can't meet today. Father found out about our meetings. Don't know how. He's furious, says if I see you again, I'm out. Same as you. I'm sorry. I don't know what to do. I don't want to lose you again, but I can't lose everything else either. I'm not as brave as you. I'm sorry." Lena read it twice, feeling something cold settle in her chest. So that was it. Her father had cut off the last thread connecting her to her old life. She folded the letter carefully and tucked it in her pocket. Thanked Mr. Garrett. Walked outside. The street was busy, people going about their lives, unaware that hers had just gotten a little bit smaller. She untied her horse and climbed into the saddle. Didn't let herself cry until she was well out of town and no one could see. When she got home, Caleb took one look at her face and knew. What happened? She told him, handed him the letter. Watched his expression darken as he read. "He's a coward," Caleb said flatly. "He's scared." Same thing. "No, it's not." Lena took the letter back. "He's 20 years old and he's all my parents have left. I don't blame him for choosing them. Even though he's choosing wrong? Even though..." She sighed. "Just wish..." She didn't finish the sentence, didn't need to. Caleb pulled her into his arms and held her while she finally let herself break down. Not sobbing, just quiet tears that she'd been holding back for too long. "I'm tired," she whispered against his chest. "I know. I'm so tired of fighting." "I know." He stroked her hair. "But we're still here. We're still standing." For how much longer? He didn't have an answer to that, so he just held her tighter. That night, as they lay in bed, Lena made a decision. "We need to leave," she said. Caleb shifted beside her. "What?" "This ranch, this town, all of it. We need to start over somewhere else." "Lena, I mean it." She sat up, facing him in the dark. "My father's never going to stop. He's going to keep making our lives hell until we either give up or die trying, and I'm not doing either. Where would we even go? West, further west, somewhere he can't reach us. We don't have the money for that. We'll save it. We'll sell what we can. We'll find a way." Her voice was firm now, determined. "I'm not spending the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. I want to build something that's ours, really ours. Somewhere nobody knows my name or cares who my father is." Caleb was quiet for a long time. Then he reached out and took her hand. "All right," he said. "All right? If that's what you want, then that's what we'll do." He squeezed her fingers. "We'll save every penny, work every job. And when we have enough, we'll go." Relief flooded through her. "You mean it?" "Yeah." He pulled her back down beside him. "I mean it. You and me. Somewhere new. Somewhere better." Lena closed her eyes and felt something like hope flicker to life in her chest. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing with them ever was. But it was possible. And right now, that was enough. They started saving the next day. Every penny they earned went into a tin box Caleb kept hidden under a loose floorboard beneath the bed. Lena took on extra shifts at the bakery, started mending clothes late into the night by candlelight until her eyes burned. Caleb hired himself out for day labor whenever he could spare the time. Building fences, breaking horses, anything that paid. The work was brutal and the progress felt impossibly slow. By the end of August, they'd saved $37. It wasn't nearly enough for the kind of fresh start they needed, but it was something. "How much do you think we'll need?" Lena asked one night as they counted the money for the third time that week. Caleb rubbed his jaw. "Depends where we go. How far? What we're planning to do when we get there." He paused. "At least 200, maybe 3 to be safe." Lena's stomach sank. "That'll take years." "Maybe not. If we sell the ranch, who's going to buy it?" She gestured around the cabin. "Half the pasture's burned. The barn's falling apart. We've got 12 cattle and a dream." "Someone might. Not for what it's worth." Lena set the money back in the tin. "We need another plan." "Like what?" She didn't have an answer, not yet. But 2 days later, opportunity came knocking in the form of a stranger. Lena was hanging laundry when she saw the rider approaching.
She didn't recognize the horse or the man, which immediately put her on edge. Strangers rarely meant good news out here. She called for Caleb, who emerged from the barn with a rifle in hand, not pointed at anyone, just present. The stranger reined in his horse about 20 feet away and raised both hands in a gesture of peace. "Easy now. I'm not here for trouble." "Then state your business," Caleb said. The man was older, maybe 50, with a weathered face and intelligent eyes. He wore trail clothes that had seen better days but were well maintained. "Name's Henry Dutton. I'm a land scout for the railroad company pushing west out of Denver." Lena felt Caleb tense beside her. Railroad meant money. It also meant complications. "What do you want with us?" Caleb asked. "Heard you might be interested in selling." "Heard from who?" Dutton smiled slightly. "Word travels. Small towns talk. Man at the general store mentioned you've been asking around about property values." He glanced at Lena. "Mentioned your wife's been working herself ragged to save money." Lena's jaw tightened. So much for keeping their plans quiet. "We're not interested," Caleb said flatly. "You haven't heard my offer yet." "Don't need to. This land's not for sale." $300. The number hung in the air like a gunshot. Lena's breath caught. That was more than they'd hoped to get. More than the property was probably worth in its current condition. Caleb's expression didn't change. "Why?" "Railroad needs a route through this valley. Your land's positioned right where we need a station stop." Dutton shifted in his saddle. "It's not the best land we've seen, I'll be honest, but it's in the right place, and we're willing to pay fair price for the convenience." "300's more than fair for what we've got," Caleb said slowly. "Which makes me think you're either desperate or lying." "Little bit of both," Dutton admitted. "We've got a deadline to meet, and other landowners in the area are being difficult. You sell to us, you solve our problem and yours." He paused. "I heard about your situation, about what happened with your wife's family, about the fire." "What fire?" Caleb's voice went sharp. "The one that burned your south pasture 6 weeks ago." Dutton's expression was careful. "Funny thing about that fire. Started right at the property line where it meets Crossland. Almost like someone wanted to make sure it spread just far enough to hurt, but not far enough to be obvious." Lena felt ice form in her stomach. "You have proof of that?" "No, ma'am. Just observations. But I've been doing this work long enough to know the difference between an accident and something intentional." He looked at Caleb. "Point is, I know you're in a hard spot. I'm offering you a way out. $300, cash, right now. You take it and leave. Start fresh somewhere he can't touch you." "How do you know he can't touch us?" Lena asked. "Because the railroad doesn't care about local family feuds. We buy this land. It's ours. Your father wants to make trouble. He makes trouble with men who have lawyers and money and political connections." Dutton smiled again, colder this time. "He's a big fish in a small pond. We're the ocean." Caleb looked at Lena. She could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. This was everything they'd been working toward. A way out, freedom, safety. But it also meant giving up. Admitting they couldn't make it work. Letting her father win, even if he didn't know it. "Can we think about it?" Lena asked. "Take until tomorrow morning," Dutton said. "I'm staying at the boarding house in town. You have an answer by sunrise. We'll do the paperwork before noon, and you can be gone by sunset." He tipped his hat. "I hope you'll take it. You both deserve better than this." He rode off without waiting for a response. Lena and Caleb stood there in silence for a long moment, watching him disappear into the distance. $300, Caleb said finally. "I know. We could go anywhere, do anything." "I know." He turned to face her. But nothing. We should take it." Lena forced the words out even though they tasted bitter. "It's the smart choice." "You don't sound convinced." "I'm not." She sat down on the porch steps, suddenly exhausted. "I hate that he wins." "Your father?" "Yes." She looked up at Caleb. "If we take this money and run, he gets exactly what he wanted. We're gone. We're not his problem anymore. He gets to tell himself he was right all along, that we couldn't make it, that you weren't good enough, that I was stupid for trying. Who cares what he tells himself? I do." The admission surprised her. "I care, because part of me still wants to prove him wrong, still wants to show him that I can survive this,
that we can build something real. We will, Caleb said, just somewhere else. Is it still proving him wrong if we run away? Caleb sat down beside her. Yes, because we're not running from you and me. We're running from him. There's a difference. Lena leaned against his shoulder. I wish we had more time. We've got until tomorrow morning. That's not what I mean. She closed her eyes. I wish we had time to make this place work, to turn it into something we could be proud of, to build a life here that was ours. We can do that anywhere. I know. It feels like giving up. It's not giving up, Caleb said firmly. It's choosing to fight a battle we can actually win. He took her hand. Your father wants you miserable, wants you to fail. Taking this money and leaving, that's not giving him what he wants. That's taking his weapon away. He can't hurt us if we're not here. Lena knew he was right. Logically, she knew it. But logic and emotion were two different animals, and right now emotion was winning. What do you want to do? She asked. I want to give you a life where you're not scared all the time, where you're not working yourself to death just to survive. He squeezed her hand. I want to take you somewhere new and build something we actually choose instead of something we're forced into. Even if it means admitting we couldn't make it here? We did make it here. We survived. That's not nothing. He lifted her chin so she was looking at him. But surviving isn't the same as living, and I want us to live. Lena felt tears prick her eyes. Okay. Okay? Let's take the money. Let's go. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. You're right. This isn't giving up. It's choosing us. Caleb pulled her close and kissed her forehead. We're going to be all right. Promise? Promise. That night, they barely slept. They made lists of what to pack and what to leave behind, argued about logistics, where they'd go first, what they'd do when they got there, how they'd make the money last. Lena felt something building in her chest that she was afraid to name. It wasn't quite hope. It was too fragile for that. But it was close. By the time the sun rose, they'd made their decision. Caleb rode into town alone to meet Dutton while Lena started packing. She sorted through their belongings with ruthless efficiency, keeping only what they could carry or couldn't replace. Clothes, tools, a few photographs, the tin box with their savings. Everything else would stay. The furniture Caleb had built, the dishes Lena had scrubbed 1,000 times, the life they'd tried to make and couldn't quite sustain. She was folding her third dress when she heard horses outside. Multiple horses. Her stomach dropped. She walked to the window and looked out. 5 riders. Her father at the front. For a moment, Lena couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then survival instinct kicked in and she ran to the door, throwing the bolt just as her father's boots hit the porch. Lena! His voice was thunder. Open this door! Go away. I said open the door. And I said go away. You're not welcome here. This isn't your property anymore, her father said. I know about the railroad. I know you're selling, which means this land belongs to them now, not you. The papers aren't signed yet. Doesn't matter. You've already made your choice. There was a pause. Then his voice lowered, turned almost reasonable. I'm not here to fight. I just want to talk. We have nothing to talk about. I disagree. Another pause. I'm coming in. Before Lena could respond, the door shook as something heavy slammed into it. Once, twice. On the third hit, the bolt gave way and the door crashed open. Her father stood in the doorway, bigger than she remembered. Behind him, his men fanned out, hands resting on gun belts. Lena backed up, heart hammering. Get out! Where's your husband? None of your business. I asked you a question, and I told you to get out. Lena forced her voice steady, even though her hands were shaking. You have no right to be here. I have every right. You're my daughter. No, Lena said coldly. I stopped being your daughter the day you tried to sell me, remember? Her father's jaw tightened. I did what was necessary to protect this family. You did what was necessary to protect yourself. There's a difference. Don't lecture me about sacrifice, girl. You have no idea what you've what? Lost? Lena laughed, sharp and bitter. You lost it all anyway. Hartwell walked. Your investors walked. You had to sell half the ranch just to keep the rest, and now you're here because you heard we're leaving and you can't stand it.
I'm here because you're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was not leaving sooner." Her father took a step closer. Lena held her ground, even though everything in her screamed to run.
"You think selling to the railroad solves your problems?" he asked. "You think $300 is going to last you? You think starting over somewhere new is going to be easier than staying here?" "Yes," Lena said, "because anywhere is easier than living under your shadow." "You're naive, and you're bitter. At least I'm trying to build something instead of destroying it." Her father's expression went dark.
"I built everything you ever had. This ranch, this name, the life you threw away. I gave you all of it." "You gave me a cage," Lena shot back, "and then you got angry when I refused to live in it." "I gave you security, stability, a future. You gave me a prison sentence with a rich man's name on it. That's not a future. That's a transaction. And what you have now is better?" Her father gestured around the small cabin. "This? This is what you chose?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because it's mine." Lena's voice cracked but didn't break. "Because I chose it. Because the man I'm with actually sees me as a person instead of property. Because when I wake up in the morning, I get to decide what kind of life I want instead of living the one you planned for me." Her father stared at her. Something flickered across his face, too fast to name, then vanished behind the familiar mask of anger. "You're going to regret this," he said. "Maybe, but it'll be my regret, not yours." The silence stretched taut. Then her father turned to one of his men. "Search the place." "What?" Lena stepped forward. "You can't. I can do whatever I want until those papers are signed." He looked at her coldly. "And I want to make sure you're not taking anything that doesn't belong to you. Everything here belongs to us. We bought it. We built it." "Did you?" Her father walked slowly around the room, picking up items and examining them. "This pot, where'd it come from?" "The general store." "With what money?" Lena's jaw clenched. "Money we earned." "You sure about that? Because I seem to remember giving you an allowance before you left. Clothes, jewelry, little things you might have sold." He set the pot down. "I want them back." "I don't have them anymore." "Then I'll take what you do have. As compensation." He nodded to his men. "Start packing." "You can't do this." "Watch me." Lena lunged forward, but one of the ranch hands caught her arm. Not rough, just firm enough to stop her. "Let go of me," she hissed. "Easy now," the man said. It was Becker, the same one who'd delivered her father's money months ago. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." "Harder? He's stealing from us." "He's taking what he thinks he's owed," Becker said quietly. "Just let him. It's not worth fighting." But Lena wasn't listening. She was watching her father's men ransack the cabin, pulling clothes from drawers, taking tools from hooks, loading everything onto their horses. "Where's the money?" her father asked. "What money?" "Don't play stupid. Your husband rode into town this morning to sell to the railroad, which means there's cash somewhere. Where is it?" "He has it with him." "All of it?" Lena didn't answer. Her father smiled, cold and knowing. "Search the bedroom." "No!" Lena tried to pull free, but Becker held on. One of the men disappeared into the back room. Lena heard furniture being moved, boards creaking, then a triumphant shout. "Found it!" The man emerged holding the tin box, the one with their savings. $37 that had taken them months to scrape together. Her father took it, opened it, counted the money. "Not much, but it'll do." He pocketed it and tossed the empty tin on the floor. Lena felt something snap inside her. She wrenched free from Becker and flew at her father, all fury and desperation. "That's ours! You have no right!" Her father caught her wrists easily, held her at arm's length while she struggled. "I have every right," he said quietly. "You took my daughter, my investment, my reputation. You think I'm going to let you walk away with anything?" "I didn't take anything. I left. There's a difference." "Not to me." He released her and she stumbled back, breathing hard. "You want to start over? Fine. Do it with nothing, just like you're worth." The words hit like a physical blow. Her father turned and walked out. His men followed, carrying everything they'd taken. Becker was last. He paused at the door and looked back at Lena. "I'm sorry," he said. Then he was gone.
Lena stood in the ransacked cabin, staring at the wreckage of everything she and Caleb had built. Clothes scattered, furniture overturned, the tin box lying empty on the floor. She sank down onto the bed and put her head in her hands. That was how Caleb found her an hour later. He'd come back jubilant. The paperwork was signed, the money secured, they were free to leave. But the moment he walked through the broken door, his expression changed. "What happened?" Lena told him. All of it, her father, the men, the tin box. Caleb's face went white, then red, then something harder than either. "I'm going after him," he said. "No." "Lena, no." She stood, grabbing his arm. "That's what he wants. He wants you to come at him angry so he has an excuse to finish this. Don't give him the satisfaction." "He stole from us. $37, Lena said. "We have 300 from the railroad. We're still ahead. It's not about the money." "I know, but going after him won't change anything. He's already decided who we are to him. Nothing we do will make a difference." Caleb stood there, breathing hard, fists clenched. She could see the war happening inside him, the need to fight versus the knowledge that she was right. "I hate this," he said finally. "Me too." He pulled her close. They stood there in the wreckage, holding on to each other like they were the only solid things left in the world. "When do we leave?" Lena asked. "Tomorrow morning, soon as we can pack what's left." "Good." She pulled back and looked him in the eye. "I don't want to spend another night in this place." They worked through the evening, salvaging what they could. It wasn't much. Most of their belongings were gone, but they had enough clothes to travel, enough supplies to get started, and they had the $300 from Dutton secured in Caleb's saddlebag where her father's men hadn't thought to look. That night, they slept on the floor wrapped in blankets. The bed frame was broken. Her father's men had torn it apart looking for hidden money. Lena lay awake staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow they'd leave, start over, build something new. But tonight, she let herself grieve. Not for what they'd lost. Things were just things. For what had been taken, for the cruelty of it, for the fact that the man who was supposed to protect her had become the person she most needed protection from. "You awake?" Caleb asked quietly. "Yeah." "You okay?" "No." She turned to face him. "But I will be." He kissed her forehead. "We're going to make it." "I know." She didn't know. Not really, but saying it out loud made it feel possible. They left before dawn. No goodbyes, no last looks. They just loaded what they had onto their horses and rode out as the sky turned gray. Lena didn't look back. Not when they passed the burned pasture. Not when they crossed the property line. Not when the cabin disappeared behind them. She looked forward, toward the horizon, toward whatever came next. They rode hard for 3 days, putting as much distance between themselves and the valley as possible. They slept rough, under stars, in abandoned barns, once in a cave when rain forced them off the trail. On the 4th day, they reached a town called Marston Creek. It was small, maybe 200 people, but it had what they needed: a general store, a blacksmith, a land office, and most importantly, it was far enough from her father's reach that nobody would know their names or care about their history. They found a boarding house and paid for a week. The room was tiny and the bed sagged in the middle, but it was clean and dry and theirs. That night, as they lay together, Caleb asked the question they'd both been avoiding. What now? Lena thought about it. They had money. Not a lot, but enough to give them options. They could buy land again, start another ranch, try to rebuild what they'd lost. Or they could do something different, something that didn't tie them to one place, something that gave them more control over their own fate. "I don't know," she admitted. "What do you want?" "I want to stop running. I want to find a place where we can actually settle, where we're not looking over our shoulders all the time." "Me too." Lena was quiet for a beat. "But I also don't want to make the same mistakes. We tried ranching and it nearly broke us. So what do you suggest?" "Something smaller, more manageable. Maybe—" She paused, thinking. "What if we opened a store? Or a boarding house like this one? Something that brings in steady money instead of gambling on crops and cattle." Caleb considered it. "You know anything about running a store?" "No, but I can learn. We both can." "It's a risk." "Everything's a risk."
She propped herself up on one elbow. But at least this way, we're not dependent on weather or disease or luck. We're dependent on people. And people always need things. A slow smile spread across Caleb's face. You've been thinking about this. I have. All right. Let's do it. Really? Really. He pulled her back down beside him. But we do it smart. We don't rush. We take our time, find the right opportunity, make sure we're not just jumping into something because we're desperate. Agreed. They spent the next 2 weeks exploring Marston Creek and the surrounding area, talking to locals, learning what businesses thrived and which ones struggled, studying the flow of people and money, and slowly a plan began to take shape. There was a property on the edge of town, an old trading post that had been abandoned for years. The building was sound but needed work. It sat right on the main road heading west, which meant it caught travelers before they reached town. Perfect for what they had in mind. Caleb negotiated with the land office while Lena sketched out designs. They'd turn it into a combination general store and way station. Sell supplies to travelers, offer meals and a place to rest, maybe rent out a few rooms for overnight stays. It would be hard work, but it would be theirs. They bought the property for $75 and spent the next month renovating, patching the roof, fixing the walls, building shelves and counters. Lena sewed curtains and tablecloths while Caleb reinforced the structure and dug a new well. They opened in late October. The first week was slow. A few travelers, a couple locals curious about the new owners, but word spread, and gradually business picked up. By December, they were turning a small profit. Not much, but enough to cover expenses and save a little on the side. Lena stood behind the counter one evening, watching Caleb serve soup to a family passing through. The father was road-weary and grateful. The children ate like they hadn't seen food in days. The mother kept thanking them over and over. It wasn't the life Lena had been raised for. It wasn't glamorous or prestigious. But it was real. And it was theirs. And for the first time in a long time, Lena felt something she'd almost forgotten. Peace. That peace lasted exactly 4 months. It shattered on a Tuesday afternoon when a man walked through the door and Lena's entire body went cold. She was restocking shelves, back turned to the entrance, when she heard Caleb's voice go tight. "Can I help you?" Something in his tone made her turn around. The man standing in the doorway wasn't her father, but he worked for him. She recognized him from the ranch. His name was Porter, and he'd been her father's foreman for as long as she could remember. "Mrs. Ridge," Porter said, tipping his hat. His face was neutral, but his eyes were calculating. "Didn't expect to find you here." Lena set down the can she was holding carefully, like any sudden movement might trigger something. "What do you want?" "Just passing through, saw your sign, thought I'd stop in for supplies." "We're closed." "Your sign says you're open until 6. "Sign's wrong." Caleb moved to stand between Porter and Lena. "You need to leave." Porter held up his hands in a gesture of peace. "Easy now. I'm not here to cause trouble. Just making an observation." He glanced around the store, taking in the shelves, the counter, the living quarters visible through the back door. "Nice little setup you've got. Must be doing all right for yourselves." "We're managing," Lena said coldly. "Now get out." "I will. Just wanted to deliver a message first." Porter's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Your father knows where you are." The words hung in the air like a threat. "How?" Caleb demanded. "Same way I found you, asked around, followed the trail. You two aren't exactly inconspicuous. Young couple running from trouble, buying property with railroad money." Porter shrugged. "Word travels." Lena felt her stomach twist. "What does he want?" "Nothing. Yet." Porter moved toward the door, then paused. "But he wanted you to know he's watching. Wanted you to know you can run as far as you want, but you're still his daughter, and he doesn't forget." "Tell him I'm not his daughter anymore," Lena said. "I haven't been since the day he sold me." "I'll tell him." Porter tipped his hat again. "You folks have a nice day now." He walked out, leaving the door standing open behind him. Caleb immediately went to the window, watching until Porter mounted his horse and rode off. Even after he disappeared, Caleb kept watching, jaw clenched so hard Lena could see the muscle jumping. "He's going to come after us," Caleb said. "We don't know that." "Yes, we do." He turned to face her. "Your father didn't send someone all this way just to say hello. He's making a point.
He's telling us he can reach us whenever he wants. Then what do we do? Caleb ran a hand through his hair, frustration and fear warring on his face. I don't know. Keep running? Stay and fight? Neither option's good. Lena walked to the door and closed it, sliding the bolt home even though it was still daylight. Her hands were shaking. I'm tired of running. So am I, but I'm more tired of looking over my shoulder. We can't keep doing this forever. At some point, we have to make a stand. Against what? Your father has money, influence, men willing to do his dirty work? What do we have? A store and a prayer? We have each other, Lena said. That's more than he has. Caleb looked at her for a long moment. Then he pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. I'm scared I can't protect you from him. I don't need you to protect me. I need you to stand with me. Always. He kissed her hair. But we need a plan. We can't just wait for him to make the next move. They spent that evening discussing their options. They could sell the store and run again, but that would mean starting over for the third time, with even less than before. They could stay and hope her father lost interest, but that seemed unlikely given the effort he'd made to find them. They could try to fight back somehow, but they had no leverage and no allies. Every option felt like a losing proposition. That night, Lena lay awake listening to the wind outside and the sound of Caleb's breathing beside her. She thought about her father, about the man he used to be when she was young. Or maybe he'd always been this way and she'd just been too naive to see it. She thought about Tom, wondered if he knew where she was, if he'd told their father, or if Porter had found them some other way. She thought about the life she'd built here. Small and fragile as it was, it mattered. This place mattered. The travelers they fed, the supplies they sold, the quiet moments with Caleb when the store was empty and it was just the two of them. She didn't want to give that up, didn't want to run again, but she also didn't know how to fight something she couldn't see coming. Morning came too soon. Lena was exhausted, gritty-eyed from lack of sleep, but she got up anyway and started the daily routine. Coffee, breakfast, opening the store. Business was slow. A few travelers stopped in for supplies. A local woman bought flour and sugar. Nobody mentioned Porter's visit, but Lena could feel the weight of it hanging over everything. Around noon, a stagecoach pulled up outside. 4 passengers climbed out, road-weary and hungry. Lena served them lunch while Caleb tended to their horses. One of the passengers was a woman about Lena's age, traveling alone. She had dark circles under her eyes and a bruise on her wrist that she kept trying to hide under her sleeve. You all right? Lena asked quietly as she refilled the woman's coffee. The woman startled. I'm fine. That bruise says different. It's nothing, I just... She stopped, glancing at the other passengers. I'm fine. Lena recognized that tone. The forced brightness. The deflection. She'd used it herself often enough. When the others went outside to smoke, Lena sat down across from the woman. If you're running from someone, you don't have to keep running alone. The woman's eyes widened. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. Lena kept her voice gentle. I've been where you are. Different circumstances maybe, but the same fear, the same feeling of being trapped with nowhere to go. The woman stared at her for a long moment. Then her shoulders sagged. My husband, She touched the bruise. He gets angry, and when he's angry, he doesn't care who sees. Where are you headed? West, as far as I can get. She laughed bitterly. I have $30 and a bag of clothes. That's it. I don't even know where I'm going to sleep tonight. Lena thought about herself 4 months ago. Thought about what it felt like to leave everything behind with nothing but hope and stubbornness. You can stay here, she heard herself say. The woman blinked. What? We have a spare room. It's small, but it's clean. You can stay until you figure out what's next. I can't pay you. I'm not asking you to. I'm offering. Lena stood. No strings, no judgment, just a safe place to catch your breath. The woman's eyes filled with tears. Why would you do that for a stranger? Because someone did it for me once, in a different way, but still. Lena held out her hand. I'm Lena. The woman took it. Sarah. When the stagecoach left an hour later, Sarah stayed behind. Caleb raised his eyebrows when Lena told him, but didn't argue. How long is she staying? As long as she needs to. We don't know anything about her. We know she's running from someone who hurt her. That's enough. Caleb studied her face.
This is about your father, isn't it? No. Maybe. I don't know. Lena crossed her arms. I just know what it feels like to be desperate and scared. And if I can help someone else not feel that way, I'm going to. Even if it's risky?
Everything's risky. Breathing's risky at this point. She met his eyes. But doing nothing, watching someone suffer when you could help, that's worse than any risk. Caleb sighed. All right, but if her husband shows up looking for her, we'll deal with it. You make it sound simple. It's not, but it's necessary. Sarah turned out to be useful. She was good with numbers and helped Lena manage the books. She could cook better than either of them and started preparing meals for travelers that actually tasted like something worth paying for. And she was quiet, respectful of their space, grateful without being obsequious. After a week, Lena couldn't imagine running the store without her. After 2 weeks, Sarah started smiling again. Small smiles at first, then genuine ones. After 3 weeks, she told them about her husband, about the years of fear and pain, about the night she finally decided she'd rather die running than live trapped. I know he's looking for me, she said one evening as they cleaned up after dinner. He won't just let me go. He's too proud for that. Then we'll watch for him, Lena said. And if he shows up, he'll have to go through all of us. Sarah's eyes went bright. You'd do that? For me? Yes. Why? Because that's what people do when they're not monsters. They help each other. The words were out before Lena realized how much she meant them, how much her father's cruelty had taught her about what kindness actually looked like. Spring arrived gradually, bringing with it warmer weather and more travelers. Business picked up. The store started turning a real profit. They were able to save money again, not much, but enough to feel secure. Lena started thinking about expansion, maybe adding another room for travelers, maybe buying a wagon to transport goods from larger towns. For the first time since leaving her father's ranch, she felt like they were building something that might actually last. Then Sarah's husband showed up. He came on a Thursday afternoon when Caleb was in town getting supplies, and Lena was manning the store alone. Sarah was in the back preparing dinner. The man who walked through the door was tall and broad-shouldered, with cold eyes and a cruel mouth. He looked around the store like he owned it. "Help you?" Lena asked, keeping her voice neutral. "Looking for my wife." His voice was flat, matter-of-fact. "Heard she might be here." Lena's pulse jumped, but she kept her face calm. "Don't know what you're talking about." "Woman about this tall." He held up his hand. "Dark hair, pretty, scared. Probably told you some story about how I mistreated her." "Like I said, I don't know what you're talking about." The man smiled. It was the kind of smile that made Lena's skin crawl. "See, I think you're lying, and I don't appreciate liars." He moved toward the counter. Lena's hand dropped below it, fingers closing around the rifle Caleb kept there. "I'm going to ask you one more time," the man said. "Where's my wife?" "And I'm going to tell you one more time. I don't know." "Then you won't mind if I look around." "Actually, I would mind. This is private property. You're not welcome here." The man's expression darkened. "She's my wife. That makes her my property, and I'm not leaving without her." "She's not property," Lena said coldly. "She's a person, and she made her choice. She doesn't get to make choices. That's not how this works." "That's exactly how it works." Lena pulled the rifle up and leveled it at him. Her hands were steady even though her heart was racing. "Now get out!" The man stared at her. Then he laughed. "You're not going to shoot me." "You sure about that?" "Pretty sure. Because if you shoot me, you'll hang, and your little operation here will be finished." "Maybe, but you'll still be dead." She thumbed back the hammer. "And honestly, that sounds like a fair trade right now." The man's smile faded. For the first time, he looked uncertain. The back door creaked open. Sarah appeared in the doorway, face white but jaw set. "Get out, Marcus," she said. Her voice shook but didn't break. "I'm not going back with you." "The hell you're not." "I mean it. I'm done. I'm not your wife anymore. I'm not your anything." "You don't get to decide that." "I already did." Sarah moved to stand beside Lena. "Now leave, before someone gets hurt." Marcus looked between them. 2 women standing together, one holding a rifle, both refusing to back down. "This isn't over," he said finally. "Yes, it is," Sarah said. "It's been over for a long time. I was just too scared to admit it. Marcus stood there for another moment, face red with rage and humiliation. Then he turned and walked out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Lena kept the rifle trained on the door until she heard his horse ride off. Then she lowered it, hands finally starting to shake. "You okay?" she asked Sarah. "No," Sarah's voice cracked. "But I will be." They stood there together, breathing hard, until Caleb came back 20 minutes later. He took one look at their faces and went straight for the rifle. "What happened?" Lena told him. By the time she finished, Caleb's jaw was so tight she thought it might crack. "He'll be back," Caleb said. "I know. We need to be ready." "We will be." That night they made a plan. Caleb taught Sarah how to shoot. Lena reinforced the locks on all the doors and windows. They agreed on signals. If anyone saw Marcus coming, they'd ring the bell by the front door twice. Everyone would arm themselves and be ready. It felt extreme, paranoid even. But Lena had learned the hard way that underestimating angry men was a good way to get hurt. Marcus didn't come back that day, or the next, or the day after that. But the waiting was its own kind of torture. Every customer who walked through the door made Lena's pulse spike. Every sound outside made Sarah flinch. They were living on a knife's edge, and everyone knew it. A week passed. Then 2. Just when Lena started to think maybe Marcus had given up, he came back. This time he brought help. It was late evening, just after dark. The store was closed, but they were still cleaning up when Lena heard horses outside. Multiple horses. She looked at Caleb. He was already moving toward the rifle. "Ring the bell," he said quietly. Lena did. 2 sharp rings. Sarah appeared from the back room, her own rifle in hand. She looked terrified but determined. Someone pounded on the door. "Open up," Marcus's voice. "We're closed," Caleb called back. "I don't care. Open this door or we're coming through it." Caleb looked at Lena. She shook her head. "That's private property," Caleb said. "You break in, you're committing a crime. So call the sheriff." "Oh wait, nearest lawman's 2 days away. Guess you're on your own." The pounding came again, harder this time. "What do we do?" Sarah whispered. Lena thought fast. They were outnumbered. She could hear at least 3 voices outside. Fighting would get them killed. Surrendering would mean giving Sarah up. "The back door," she said suddenly. "Sarah, go out the back. Take a horse. Ride to town and get help." "I'm not leaving you. You have to. We can hold them off for a while, but we need the sheriff. Go. Now." Sarah hesitated for one more second. Then she nodded and ran. The front door shuddered under another impact. Wood cracked. "They're coming through," Caleb said. He positioned himself behind the counter, rifle ready. Lena grabbed her own gun and took cover behind a stack of crates. One more hit and the door gave way. Marcus came in first, flanked by 2 men Lena didn't recognize. They all had guns. "Where is she?" Marcus demanded. "Gone," Lena said. "Left hours ago. You missed her." "Liar," Marcus gestured to his men. "Search the place." "You do that and you are stealing," Caleb said. "That makes you criminals." "And who's going to stop us? You?" Marcus laughed. "Go ahead, shoot. See what happens when you kill 3 men in cold blood." "Who says it'll be cold blood?" Caleb's voice was steady. "You broke into my property. I'm defending it. That's legal." The 2 men exchanged uncertain glances. Marcus noticed. His expression hardened. "Search it, now." The men moved toward the back room. Lena heard them ransacking it, opening drawers, knocking over furniture, looking for Sarah. "She's really gone," Lena said. "By the time you figure that out, she'll be far enough away you'll never catch her." "Then I'll burn this place down," Marcus said. "Send you both a message about what happens when you help someone steal from me. She's not your property. Everything that was mine is my property, including her." He pulled a match from his pocket. "Last chance. Tell me where she went." Lena met his eyes. "No." Marcus struck the match. Before he could move, the back door slammed open and a voice shouted, "Drop it!" Everyone froze. Caleb appeared in the doorway, having circled around from outside. He had his rifle trained on Marcus's back. "Drop the match, or I drop you," Caleb said. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Marcus dropped the match. It fell to the floor and sputtered out. "Smart choice," Caleb said. Now you and your friends are going to walk out of here nice and slow, and you're not coming back. You can't keep her from me forever. Watch me. Caleb's voice went hard. You set foot on this property again. I won't wait to ask questions. I'll just shoot. And unlike you, I won't miss. Marcus's face went purple with rage. But he wasn't stupid. 3 against 2 when one of those two had the drop on you wasn't good odds. This isn't over, he said. It is, Caleb replied. You just don't know it yet. Now get out. Marcus and his men filed out. They mounted their horses and rode off into the darkness. Caleb kept his rifle trained on them until they were out of sight. Then he lowered it and let out a long breath. You okay? He asked Lena. Yeah, you? Terrified. But yeah. They went inside and assessed the damage. The front door was destroyed. The back room was trashed. But nothing was taken, and nobody was hurt. Small victories. Sarah came back an hour later with the local deputy, a young man who looked barely old enough to shave, but who took their statement seriously and promised to keep an eye out for Marcus. He probably won't come back, the deputy said. Most men like that are bullies. They fold when someone stands up to them. Most men aren't Marcus, Sarah said quietly. The deputy didn't have an answer to that. After he left, the 3 of them sat in the store, exhausted and shaken. I should go, Sarah said. I'm putting you both in danger. No, Lena cut her off. You're staying. We're not letting him run you off. But, no buts. You stood up to him. You made a choice to be free. We're not letting him take that away. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Don't thank us yet, Caleb said tiredly. This isn't over. He'll try again. Then we'll be ready, Lena said. And they were. Over the next month, they fortified the store, reinforced the doors, installed shutters on the windows. Caleb hired 2 men from town to help with security, rough types who'd worked as guards on wagon trains and knew how to handle trouble. Marcus tried twice more. Both times he was turned away before he even made it to the door. After the 3rd attempt, he finally gave up. Word came through travelers that he'd headed east, back where he came from. Whether it was true or not, they didn't know. But the attempt stopped. Slowly, life returned to something like normal. The store thrived. Sarah stayed on permanently, becoming as much a partner as an employee. She had a head for business and suggested expansions that tripled their profit. Lena found herself actually enjoying the work, the rhythm of it, the satisfaction of building something that mattered. One evening in late summer, she and Caleb sat on the porch watching the sunset. You ever think about going back? Caleb asked. To my father's ranch? Yeah. Never. Lena leaned against him. Why would I? Just curious. Wondered if you missed it. I miss Tom sometimes. I miss the person my mother used to be. But the place? The life? No. I don't miss any of that. She was quiet for a beat. Do you ever regret it? Taking me in? All the trouble that came with it? Caleb pulled her closer. Not once. Even when my father was stealing from us? When Marcus was trying to burn us down? When we had to leave everything behind? Especially then. He kissed the top of her head. Because that's when I knew for sure we'd made the right choice. We could have played it safe, could have given in, could have let them win. But we didn't. We fought together, and we're still here. Lena smiled. Yeah, we are. They sat there as the sky turned from gold to purple to black, watching stars appear one by one. Inside, Sarah was closing up the store. In the distance, a coyote howled. Everything was imperfect, uncertain, fragile. But it was theirs, and that made all the difference. 2 years passed before Lena saw her brother again. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday morning. She was sweeping the porch when a rider approached. Young, thin, hunched over like he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. She didn't recognize him at first. Then he lifted his head, and her heart stopped. Tom? He looked terrible. His clothes were worn through at the elbows. His face was gaunt, cheekbones sharp under skin that looked like it hadn't seen enough sun or enough food in months. But it was his eyes that shocked her most, hollow and haunted in a way they'd never been before. Lena! His voice cracked on her name. She dropped the broom and ran to him. He dismounted clumsily, nearly falling, and she caught him. He was lighter than she remembered, too light. What happened? She asked. Can I? He swallowed hard. Can I come inside? She let him in without hesitation. Caleb was in the back with Sarah, going over inventory. When Lena appeared with Tom, Caleb went still. It's all right, Lena said quickly. He's not here to cause trouble. Tom looked at Caleb with something like shame. I wouldn't blame you if you threw me out. After everything, sit, Caleb said. Not warm, but not hostile either. You look like you're about to fall over. Sarah brought water and bread without being asked. Tom drank like he'd been walking through a desert, then ate 3 slices so fast Lena thought he might be sick. When's the last time you ate? She asked. Yesterday, maybe the day before. I don't remember. Lena and Caleb exchanged a look. Sarah quietly went to make more food. What are you doing here, Tom? Lena asked gently. I didn't know where else to go. He stared at his hands. Everything's gone. The ranch, the house, all of it. What do you mean gone? Sold, seized, foreclosed. Pick your word. They all mean the same thing. Tom laughed bitterly. Father lost it all. The drought kept getting worse. Cattle kept dying. The creditors finally called in the debts, and that was it. 3 months ago, we had to leave. Lena felt something twist in her chest. Not satisfaction exactly. Just emptiness. Where's Father now? Dead. The word hit like a physical blow. Tom's voice stayed flat. Heart gave out 6 weeks ago. Doctor said it was probably coming for a while, but the stress of losing everything pushed it over the edge. He finally looked up at her. He died angry, Lena, bitter and furious at the world, at you, at himself, at everything. And Mother? Living with her sister in Missouri, he paused. She's not the same, doesn't talk much, just sits and stares. It's like she's there but not there, you know? Lena did know. She'd seen that look before, in women who'd lost too much too fast and couldn't find their way back. I'm sorry, she said. Tom shook his head. Don't be. You tried to warn him. You tried to tell him he was making a mistake and he wouldn't listen. He did this to himself. His voice hardened, and to the rest of us. Sarah brought out a plate of eggs and more bread. Tom ate mechanically, like he was refueling rather than tasting. Why come here? Caleb asked. His tone wasn't accusatory, just curious. You made your choice 2 years ago, chose them over Lena. I know. Tom set down his fork, and I've regretted it every day since. But I was scared. I was 20 years old and I didn't know how to stand up to him. I thought if I just kept my head down, everything would be okay. He laughed again, sharp and painful. Turns out I was wrong. What do you need from us? Lena asked. Honestly? I don't know. He stopped, started again. I've been writing for 3 days trying to figure out what to say to you, how to apologize for abandoning you, for choosing wrong, for being a coward. You were a kid, Lena said quietly. You did what you thought you had to do. So did you, but you were braver about it. The silence that followed was heavy, but not uncomfortable. Sarah cleared the empty plate. Caleb leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching Tom with an expression Lena couldn't quite read. You can stay here, Lena said finally. Tom blinked. What? You can stay. Work for us. We could use the help, and you need a place to land. She glanced at Caleb. If that's all right with you. Caleb studied Tom for a long moment. You going to run the next time things get hard? No, sir. You sure about that? No, Tom admitted, but I'd like the chance to prove I can do better. Caleb looked at Lena. She gave a small nod. All right, Caleb said, but you pull your weight. We're not carrying anyone here. I will. I promise. Tom stayed. At first it was awkward, the ghost of their shared past hanging over every conversation. But gradually, he found his place. He was good with his hands, fixing things that had been broken for months. He was good with customers, charming in a way that brought in business. And he was willing to do the hard work nobody else wanted. More than that, he seemed genuinely grateful. Not the performative gratitude of someone trying to get something, but the real kind. The kind that came from understanding how close he'd come to losing everything. One evening, about a month after he arrived, Tom found Lena alone in the store doing inventory. Can I ask you something? He said. Sure. Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if you'd married Hartwell? Lena looked up from her ledger. Sometimes, not often. What do you think it would have looked like? She considered the question. Comfortable. Safe. Empty. She set down her pen. I would have had nice dresses and a big house and probably hated every second of it. Why? Just trying to understand. Tom sat down across from her. When Father first told me about the arrangement, I thought he was doing the right thing. Thought he was protecting you, giving you a good life. He was giving himself a good life. There's a difference. I know that now. But back then, he shook his head. I really believed he knew best. That parents always knew what was right for their children. Some parents do, Lena said. Ours didn't. Or maybe he did once, and somewhere along the way he forgot that we were people instead of assets. Tom was quiet for a beat. He talked about you sometimes. After you left. Never directly. But he'd say things like, a daughter who knew her place, or the importance of family loyalty. I think he was trying to convince himself he'd done the right thing. Did it work? I don't think so. I think he died knowing he'd lost you, and it was his own fault, and that ate him alive more than losing the ranch ever could. Lena didn't know what to feel about that. Part of her wanted to feel vindicated. Part of her just felt sad. Do you miss him? She asked. I miss who I thought he was when I was young, before I understood what he was actually like. Tom met her eyes. Do you? No. The answer came quick and sure. I miss having a father, but I don't miss him specifically, if that makes sense. It does. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Tom spoke again. Thank you for taking me in, for giving me another chance. You're my brother, Lena said simply. That doesn't just go away. It did for Father. Then I'm better than he was. Tom smiled, small but genuine. Yeah, you are. The business kept growing. With Tom's help, they expanded again, adding more rooms for travelers, a small stable, even a bar area where people could get a drink and a warm meal. The store became a destination rather than just a stopover. People came from towns away because they'd heard about the good food and fair prices. Lena found herself managing more than she'd ever expected. Hiring staff, negotiating with suppliers, making decisions that affected not just her and Caleb, but a growing number of people who depended on them. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. One afternoon in early autumn, Sarah pulled Lena aside. I need to tell you something, Sarah said. Her face was serious. Lena's stomach dropped. Are you leaving? What? No, nothing like that. Sarah took a breath. I'm pregnant. Lena stared at her. Wait, how? The usual way. Sarah's cheeks colored. There's a man in town, the blacksmith. We've been seeing each other for a few months now, and, well, it happened. Does he know? Yes, he wants to marry me. And you want to marry him? Sarah smiled. I do. He's nothing like Marcus. He's kind, patient. He makes me laugh. And he knows everything about my past and doesn't care. Lena felt tears prick her eyes. I'm happy for you. Are you upset about me leaving? You're not leaving. You're just expanding. Lena pulled her into a hug. You'll still work here, right? If you'll have me, at least until the baby comes. Of course we'll have you. You're family. The word felt right. Family. Not the kind she'd been born into, but the kind she'd chosen. The kind that actually mattered. Sarah married the blacksmith, a broad-shouldered man named David, who looked at her like she'd hung the moon. The wedding was small and simple, held right there at the store with Lena and Caleb as witnesses. Watching them exchange vows, Lena felt something shift inside her. This was what marriage was supposed to look like. Not a transaction or an arrangement, just two people choosing each other freely and building a life together. She glanced at Caleb and found him already looking at her. He smiled and took her hand. They'd been married for 3 years now. Sometimes it felt like 3 decades. Other times it felt like 3 days. But every day Lena woke up and chose him again. And every day he chose her back. That, she was learning, was what love actually looked like. Not the dramatic gestures or grand declarations, just the quiet daily choice to stay, to fight, to build something together even when it was hard. Winter came early that year. The first snow fell in October, blanketing everything in white. Business slowed but didn't stop. There were always travelers who needed shelter from the cold. Lena spent the long winter evenings going over the books and making plans for spring. They had enough money now to think bigger. Maybe buy some land. Build a proper inn. Create something that would last beyond just them. One night, as she sat by the fire sketching out possibilities, Caleb came up behind her.
What are you working on?
Dreams. She showed him the drawings.
I was thinking we could buy that plot of land south of town, the one with the creek running through it. Build something permanent.
Caleb looked at the sketches.
That's ambitious. Too ambitious? No, just ambitious. He sat down beside her. You really think we can do it? I think we've done everything else people said we couldn't. Why not this too?
He smiled. Fair point. He studied the drawings more carefully. We'd need investors or a loan. We don't have enough saved. I know, but Tom's been talking to some people in town. Apparently there's interest in Marston Creek becoming a real destination. If we position it right, we might be able to get backing. From who? Business owners, town council, maybe even the railroad. She paused. I know it's risky, but everything we've done has been risky. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, let's do it.
Really?
Really. He pulled her close. But we do it smart. We don't overextend. We don't bet everything on one throw. We build slowly and carefully.
Agreed.
They spent the rest of the winter developing the plan. Tom helped with the numbers. Sarah, even heavy with pregnancy, offered ideas about what travelers actually wanted. David the blacksmith agreed to handle metalwork at cost. By spring, they had a proposal. Lena presented it to the town council on a rainy Tuesday morning. The council consisted of 5 men, all older, all skeptical. They listened to her pitch in silence, her plans for an inn that would bring travelers and money to Marston Creek, create jobs, establish them as a proper waypoint on the western route. When she finished, the head councilman, a gray-haired banker named Morrison, leaned back in his chair.
Mrs. Ridge, he said slowly, you're asking for a significant investment. What makes you think you can deliver on these promises? Because I already have, Lena said. 3 years ago, my husband and I came here with nothing. We bought a failing trading post and turned it into the most profitable business in town. We employ 4 people. We house and feed hundreds of travelers a year. We've proven we can build something that works.
You've also proven you can attract trouble, another councilman said. We've heard stories about the incidents with that woman's husband, about guns and threats. We handled it, Lena said firmly. We protected someone who needed protecting, and we did it without anyone getting hurt. If anything, that proves we can deal with difficult situations. Or it proves you invite them. Lena felt her temper flare but kept it in check. With respect, sir, trouble finds people whether they invite it or not. The question is whether you handle it or let it break you. We handled it, and we'll handle whatever comes next. Morrison studied her. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone less... He paused, searching for the word. Direct. I spent the first 24 years of my life being indirect, smiling and nodding and pretending I didn't have opinions. It didn't get me anywhere except miserable. She met his eyes. Now I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. You want someone who'll charm you with pretty words and false promises, you're talking to the wrong person. But if you want someone who'll work harder than anyone else to make this succeed, I'm right here. The room was silent. Then Morrison smiled. I'll tell you what, Mrs. Ridge, you've got guts. I respect that, but I need more than guts. I need proof this'll work. What kind of proof? Bring me 3 letters of support from established businesses. Show me you've got community backing, then we'll talk numbers. Lena left the meeting frustrated, but not defeated. 3 letters. She could do that. It took 2 weeks, but she got them. The general store owner, the livery stable operator, even the doctor who wrote about how her establishment provided essential services to travelers who might otherwise arrive in town sick or injured. She brought them back to Morrison. He read them carefully. Then he looked up at her. You're persistent, I'll give you that. Is that a yes? It's a maybe. Conditional on you matching our investment dollar for dollar. Lena's heart sank. They had money saved, but not that much. How much are we talking? Morrison named a figure. It was high, but not impossible. I'll need time to raise it, Lena said. You've got 3 months. After that, the offer expires. Lena shook his hand. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You've still got work to do. She did. For the next 3 months, Lena worked harder than she ever had. She and Caleb took on every job they could. They cut expenses to the bone. They sold everything they didn't absolutely need. Tom contributed his savings without being asked. Sarah and David pitched in what they could spare. Even some of their regular customers donated small amounts when they heard what Lena was trying to do. It was humbling, overwhelming, the realization that people believed in them enough to invest in their dream. With 2 weeks to spare, they reached the goal. Lena brought the money to Morrison in a leather satchel. He counted it twice, then nodded. All right, Mrs. Ridge, you've got your investment. The next year was a blur of construction and chaos. They bought the land and broke ground in May. By October, the basic structure was up. By December, they were doing finish work. The inn opened the following spring. It was everything Lena had imagined and more. 20 rooms, a full dining hall, a real bar, stables that could house 30 horses, a lobby with a fireplace and comfortable chairs where travelers could rest. They named it Ridge House. The grand opening drew people from 3 towns over. The rooms filled up the first night and stayed full for weeks. Business was so good they had to hire more staff just to keep up. Lena stood in the lobby on their 3rd night of operation, watching people come and go, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not the brittle defensive pride of proving someone wrong, just simple satisfaction at having built something good, something that mattered. Caleb found her standing there and wrapped his arms around her from behind. You did it, he said. We did it. Okay, we did it. He kissed her temple. You happy? Lena thought about the question. Was she happy? She was tired. She was stressed. She was constantly worried about money and supplies and whether they could maintain this level of success. But she was also free. She was choosing her own path. She was building something with her own hands alongside people she loved. Yeah, she said. I am. Sarah had her baby that summer, a girl with dark hair and her mother's stubborn chin. They named her Emma, and she immediately became the inn's unofficial mascot. Travelers cooed over her. Staff took turns bouncing her when she fussed. Even Caleb, who claimed he didn't know anything about babies, could often be found holding her while Sarah worked. Lena watched all of this and felt something she hadn't expected. Not quite longing, but curiosity. What would it be like to have a child? To create something that was part her and part Caleb? She mentioned it one night as they got ready for bed. You ever think about having kids? She asked. Caleb paused in the middle of pulling off his boots. Sometimes. You? More lately, watching Sarah with Emma, seeing how Tom is with her. He's a natural uncle. Would you want that? A child? I don't know. Maybe. It scares me a little. Why? Because I don't know how to be a mother. The only example I have is my own mother, and she... Lena stopped. She chose my father over me. Every time. I'm terrified I'd make the same mistakes. Caleb set his boots aside and came to sit beside her. You wouldn't. How do you know? Because you're already not like her. You already chose differently. You chose freedom over security. You chose yourself instead of letting someone else define you. He took her hand. If we had a kid, you'd teach them to do the same. You'd show them what it looks like to fight for what matters. What if I'm not good at it? Then you'll figure it out, same way you figured out everything else. He smiled. But we don't have to decide now. We've got time. Lena leaned against him. Thank you. For what? For not making me feel stupid for being scared. You're not stupid. You're human. He kissed her hair. And that's why I love you. Time moved differently after that. Not slower or faster, just steadier. The seasons cycled. The business thrived. The staff became like family. Tom met a woman in town, a widow with 2 young children who ran the bakery. Her name was Anne, and she had a sharp wit and a kind heart. When Tom asked if he could court her, Lena gave him her blessing without hesitation. They married that winter in a quiet ceremony at the inn. Watching her brother stand up there, looking nervous and happy and completely in love, Lena felt her throat tighten. You all right? Caleb whispered. Yeah. She squeezed his hand. Just thinking about how far we've all come. It's been quite a journey. It's not over yet.
No, Caleb agreed, but we're doing okay. More than okay, Lena thought. They were building something real, something lasting. She got pregnant the following spring. It wasn't planned exactly, but it wasn't unwelcome either. When the doctor confirmed it, Lena sat in his office feeling a strange mix of terror and joy. "You sure?" she asked. "As sure as I can be without being inappropriate about it." The doctor smiled. "Congratulations, Mrs. Ridge." She told Caleb that night. He stared at her for a long moment, then whooped so loud it startled the guests in the dining hall. "We're having a baby," he said, half laughing, half crying. "We're having a baby," Lena repeated. And this time when she said it, the fear was smaller than the joy. The pregnancy was hard. Lena was sick for the first 3 months, exhausted for the next 3, and huge and uncomfortable for the final 3. She worked through most of it because sitting still felt impossible, but Caleb and Tom and Sarah all conspired to make her rest more than she wanted. "You're growing a human," Sarah said when Lena protested. "That's enough work for now." The baby came on a cold January morning. The labor was long and painful, and at one point Lena was convinced she was going to die. But Caleb stayed with her the whole time, holding her hand and telling her she was strong, she was brave, she could do this. And she did. Their son was born just after sunrise. He was red and wrinkled and screaming at the top of his lungs. The doctor placed him in Lena's arms, and she looked down at this tiny, furious creature and felt her entire world shift. "Hi," she whispered. "I'm your mother." He stopped crying and stared at her with unfocused eyes. Then he yawned and fell asleep against her chest. Caleb leaned over them both, his face wet with tears. "He's perfect." "He's loud," Lena said, but she was smiling. "What should we call him?" They discussed names but never decided. Now, looking at her son, Lena knew. "James, after your father." Caleb's breath caught. "You sure?" "I'm sure. Your father was a good man. Our son should have a good name to live up to." Caleb kissed her forehead. "James Ridge. I like it." James turned out to be as stubborn as his mother and as quiet as his father. He rarely cried, but when he did, it was impossible to miss. He watched everything with solemn eyes, like he was studying the world and finding it wanting. Lena had never loved anything the way she loved that child. It was terrifying and consuming and absolutely worth it. She took 3 months away from the business to focus on him. Tom and Sarah ran things smoothly in her absence, proving they were more than capable. When Lena finally came back, it was part-time and with James strapped to her chest in a carrier Caleb had built. "You don't have to work," Caleb said one morning. "We're doing fine financially. You could just be with him." "I know, but I like working. I like building this." She adjusted James's blanket. "And I like showing him what his mother does, what she's capable of." Caleb smiled. "Fair enough." James grew fast. Before Lena knew it, he was crawling, then walking, then running through the inn like he owned it. Guests loved him. Staff spoiled him. Tom taught him to stack blocks. Sarah let him help in the kitchen. By the time he was 3, he was a fixture in the business. By 5, he was helping with small tasks. By 7, he was learning to read the ledgers. Lena watched all of this with a mix of pride and fear. She wanted him to understand hard work, but she also wanted him to have choices, to never feel trapped the way she had. One evening, she found him sitting on the porch watching the sunset. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, sitting beside him. "Nothing. That's a lot of thinking for nothing." James was quiet for a moment. Then, "Mama, why did Grandfather Cross never come to see me?" Lena's breath caught. She'd been dreading this question. "Who told you about him?" "Uncle Tom. He said Grandfather owned a big ranch and lost it. He said you used to live there but left." "That's true." "Why'd you leave?" How to explain this to a 7-year-old? How to tell him about control and freedom and the cost of choosing yourself? "Because he wanted me to be someone I wasn't," Lena said carefully. "He had plans for my life that didn't include me having a say, and I decided I'd rather make my own plans." "Was he mad?" "Very mad." "Is that why he never came to see me? Because he was mad at you?" "Partly. Also because he died before you were born." James processed this. "Do you miss him?" "Sometimes I miss the idea of having a father. But no, I don't miss him specifically." "That's sad." "Yeah, Baidi. I'll say,
Lena put her arm around him. But not everything has to be sad about it. Because if I'd stayed, I never would have met your father, and we never would have had you. So in a way, leaving was the best thing I ever did. James leaned against her. I'm glad you left. Me too, sweetheart. They sat there watching the sky turn from gold to purple. Inside, Lena could hear Caleb and Tom laughing about something, could smell dinner cooking, could hear the familiar sounds of the inn settling in for the evening. This was her life now, not the one she'd been born into or the one that had been planned for her, but the one she'd fought for, the one she'd built with her own hands and her own choices. And it was good. The years continued to pass. James grew into a thoughtful, serious boy who loved numbers and building things. They had a daughter 3 years after him, a wild, laughing girl they named Catherine, who was afraid of nothing and charmed everyone she met. The inn prospered. They expanded twice more, adding more rooms and a second dining hall. The town grew up around them. Marston Creek became a real destination, drawing people from hundreds of miles away. Lena found herself becoming a pillar of the community. People came to her for advice, for loans, for help navigating the challenges of frontier life. She served on the town council for 2 terms and helped establish a school and a hospital. It was strange being looked up to, being respected not for her father's name, but for her own accomplishments, being valued for what she could do rather than what she represented. She'd spent so much of her youth being told she was nothing without her family name, and now here she was, having built something more substantial than anything that name had ever given her. One afternoon when Lena was 42, she was working in the office when Caleb came in. "You need to see this," he said. She followed him outside. A rider was approaching, well-dressed, riding a fine horse. When he got closer, Lena's breath caught. It was Gregory Hartwell, the man she was supposed to have married 20 years ago. He reined in and dismounted with practiced ease. Up close, he looked older but distinguished. Gray at the temples, lines around his eyes, expensive clothes that probably cost more than most people made in a year. "Mrs. Ridge," he said. "Or is it Mrs. Cross? I confess I'm not sure." "It's Ridge," Lena said coolly. "Mr. Hartwell. Please call me Gregory." He glanced around, taking in the inn, the grounds, the obvious prosperity. "Impressive. Very impressive. I'd heard you'd done well for yourself, but seeing it in person is something else. What are you doing here?" "Business in the area. Thought I'd stop by and satisfy my curiosity." He smiled. "I wanted to see what became of the woman who refused me." "Well, now you've seen. Was there anything else?" Gregory studied her. "I'll be honest. When your father told me you'd run off with some rancher, I thought you'd made the biggest mistake of your life. I thought you'd end up desperate and broken, crawling back within a year. Sorry to disappoint. You didn't." His smile widened. "You exceeded every possible expectation. You built something remarkable here. You should be proud." "I am." "May I ask, do you ever regret it, refusing my proposal?" Lena didn't hesitate. "Not once. Not even when things were hard? Especially not then. Because the hard times taught me things your money never could. They taught me I was capable of more than I'd been told, that I could survive on my own terms, that I didn't need anyone's name or fortune to matter." Gregory nodded slowly. "I think I understand now. What I was offering wasn't what you wanted." "No, it wasn't. For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. You wouldn't have been happy with me." "I know." He tipped his hat. "It was good to meet you properly, Mrs. Ridge. I wish you all the best." "You too." He mounted his horse and rode off. Lena watched him go, feeling nothing but mild curiosity. This was the man who was supposed to have been her future. The safe choice. The smart choice. She was so glad she'd been stupid enough to choose differently. That evening, she found Caleb in their private quarters, reading while the children played nearby. "You all right?" he asked. "Yeah." She sat down beside him. "Just thinking." "About?" "About how lucky I am. How lucky we are." She took his hand. "I could have had a very different life. A very safe, very empty life. And instead I got this." "This is chaos," Caleb said, gesturing at their children who were currently building a fort out of blankets and arguing about architecture. I know, it's perfect. He laughed and kissed her. You're strange. And you love me anyway. Despite my better judgment, yes. Lena leaned against him, watching their children play. James was trying to explain structural integrity to Catherine, who was completely ignoring him in favor of making the fort as tall as possible. They were going to fight about it in approximately 30 seconds. And Lena wouldn't change any of it, because this chaotic, imperfect, hard-won life was hers. Not her father's, not Gregory Hartwell's, not society's or expectations or anyone else's, hers. That night, after the children were asleep and the inn had settled into quiet, Lena stood on the porch looking at the stars. She thought about the girl she'd been 20 years ago, desperate and terrified, standing at a crossroads with everything to lose and nothing guaranteed. She thought about the choice she'd made, the one that had cost her everything familiar and given her everything that mattered. She thought about all the people who told her she was making a mistake, that she'd regret it, that she'd end up broken and alone. And she smiled, because they'd all been wrong. The truth was, courage wasn't about not being afraid. It was about being terrified and doing the thing anyway. It was about looking at the life you were supposed to have and deciding it wasn't good enough. It was about building something new from scratch, knowing you might fail but trying anyway. The truth was, freedom wasn't free. It cost her family, her name, her security, and years of brutal work. But it gave her something more valuable than any of that. It gave her herself. The truth was, love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It was about choosing someone every day, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. It was about building a life together one decision at a time, through drought and fire and all the things that tried to break you. And the truth was, you couldn't wait for permission to be who you were meant to be. You couldn't wait for the perfect moment, or the right circumstances, or someone else's approval. You had to grab your life with both hands and make it into something you could live with. That was the lesson Lena had learned, the one she'd teach her children, the one she hoped would echo beyond her own life into the lives of people she'd never meet. You were not your father's daughter, or your husband's wife, or society's expectation. You were yourself. And that was enough. That was everything. Caleb came out to join her, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "What are you doing out here?" he asked. "Just thinking." About? About how I used to measure success by what I had, how big the ranch was, how much money we had, how respected my family's name was. She turned to face him. Now I measure it by who I am, and I think I turned out pretty good. Caleb pulled her close. Better than good. You turned out exactly who you were supposed to be. We both did. They stood there together, watching the stars and listening to the night sounds of the inn they'd built. Inside, their children slept. Around them, the business they'd created hummed with quiet life. Below them, the town they'd helped build stretched out into darkness. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. But it was theirs. And that made all the difference.